In this video, I'm going to show you how to use ChatGPT and similar tools to gain a much better understanding of your audience. So as a brand or a company, you can target them and communicate with them in more effective ways so that they actually end up engaging with your brand and buying your products or services. So I'm going to jump straight into ChatGPT here. I'm going to pick a brand to do this with because I find that's often the best way to go about learning something like this. And I'm going to choose IKEA. Everyone knows IKEA. I'm the big flat pack furniture brand. And to start, I'm just going to start with a pretty top level prompt. I want to understand the different audiences that I might be able to target if I'm working for IKEA. So I'll start with something like, tell me about the different audience types for the brand IKEA. Now, just to note, if you're a much smaller brand, you might need to actually tell GPT about the brand itself. So you might need to put in, put in the about us, put in the website, tell it to do some searching. ChatGPT will know who IKEA is, and it will be able to find this out pretty quickly. So this is useful, but I find it's much better to have this presented in a table form. So what I'm going to say is something along the lines of, please present this in table form. Choose the top 3 likely biggest audiences, because again, this is too much to focus on in one time. So try and chunk it down, and include the columns audience, drivers, barriers. Now, the reason I do that is because really all we want to try and understand is what drives these people to purchase and what prevents them from purchasing. We don't really need to know stuff like how old they are, what their income is. It's useful information, but when you're really just trying to get to the heart of it, try and understand what is actually getting people to go ahead and make these purchases in the first place. Okay, so it's given me 3 audience there. I'm not particularly happy with this. ChatGPT can get a bit confused. It's included some HTML tags there. So what I'm going to say, and I think one thing that's worth noting is GPT needs work. You can't just ask it something and hope for the best. You have to keep going back and forth, teaching it what you want, and kind of like getting the best possible responses out of it. And that just sometimes takes time. So what I would do here is something like, I'd say, please. I say please just in case the AIs take over one day. At least I've been polite. Please provide much more detail in terms of drivers and barriers. I really want to understand how and why these people purchase or don't from IKEA as opposed to other brands. Please don't include HTML tags in your response. So I'm going to let that run, and there what I'm trying to get it to do is really narrow in on what makes IKEA purchases different, or the IKEA audience different. See, now it's forgotten to present this in table form. That's fine. I find it quite a bit easier to understand and to break down information when it is presented in that kind of way, because now we're kind of looking at this in kind of just one long paragraph, which is tricky. So I'm actually just going to tell it, please present that in table form, include as much detail, if not more. The more we can get out of it at this stage, the better. But you're starting to see here how beginning from right up here where we've just got a very basic kind of breakdown. This isn't very useful for anybody. We're now getting GPT to kind of keep going. Okay, it's including the HTML tags again. Just try to ignore those. Again, this technology is pretty new, and it's going to make kind of like little errors here and there. I think one thing that's worth noting is ChatGPT, I think, will err on the side of giving you shorter answers rather than long ones. It costs them time and money to process answers and give you them. So you actually have to kind of nudge it to give you better responses and better answers. Because otherwise it's just going to give you kind of the default shorter one. So you can see how we've gone from here all the way down to here just by basically saying, giving me more information. So now we can start actually analyzing some of the audience data that we've got here. So we're looking at, let's say cost-conscious consumers. That makes sense. IKEA is on the cheaper end. So the drivers for purchase, value proposition. It's accessible because it's global. They have a huge product range. So it starts to kind of paint a bit of a picture for how you might want to communicate with this audience. You want to remind them of the value that IKEA brings. You want to remind them how accessible it is, about next day delivery and that kind of stuff. And then as well, kind of lean into the reputation. And then again, you can start thinking about, okay, how do the barriers, how do I overcome these barriers when these people are considering purchasing? And these are all the kinds of things that you need to just think about when approaching audiences and how you're going to communicate with them as a brand. Young urban demographic. I mean, yeah, that's kind of, flat shares and whatnot, buying stuff from IKEA. It's easy. People know what they're getting. There's a lot of selection. It's got a good social image. Then there's also the kind of aspect of IKEA is, very sustainability conscious. So there's going to be aspects of that maybe factor in here. And then thirdly, we've got families. And there's going to be a whole different sets of priorities and barriers for families. You can then really start to understand, okay, we have to actually communicate with these different audiences in quite different ways. So if I say to GPT now, based on that, let's pick one. Let's pick the cost-conscious consumer. Based on that, create a detailed audience persona for cost-conscious consumers. Focus on on why and how they purchase, as well as their online behavior and the kinds of applications that present this in the most readable way possible. So again, telling GPT the formats you want things in is super, super important. Well, it's important at least if you want your content to be kind of easy to understand. So here we go, and it's produced this audience persona. This is something that all brands create for their marketing materials. I think we can get very bogged down and stuck in the detail of creating these audience personas. They are just made up things at the end of the day, but they can be useful, especially when you focus on things like why and how they purchase. So again, don't just tell GPT to create an audience persona. Tell it to focus on particular aspects that are going to actually help you communicate with this audience. Understanding how they purchase, understanding why they purchase. These are the kinds of things that's going to help us. Knowing that they're 28 and that they're early career professionals, kind of useful, but this is the kind of meat of it and what we want to get into. And then still when we start getting into online behavior as well. So here we're starting to see some patterns. They seek value. Okay, it's given a name, Emily the budget savvy shopper. Again, that's kind of what marketers like to do. So GPT is obviously drawing on that. Home aesthetics on a budget, frequent changes. That's something quite interesting. Early stage of the career. She moves often, cost effective. There's starting to be some kind of communication angles that you might be able to pick out of that. They're very research driven. They go to store. They're interested in sales and promotions. Some of it's a bit generic. A lot of people visit stores. A lot of people are interested in sales and promotions. But when considering this audience, it's something to keep in mind. And then again, online behavior, communicating. So communication influencing them. Again, take it with a pinch of salt. This is just an AI model coming up with this. Use your own knowledge of your brand and audience to apply to this. But promotional emails, social media ads, influencer makes sense. Okay. So, and then it will summarize that for you. So we built out a bit of a picture now of one of these three audiences. And the next thing, I might go back and forth a bit more here and kind of try to tease out a little bit more about their online behaviors. I could ask it what kind of channels do they use. What I could also then do is ask it to do research. If you're paying for ChatGPT 4, I could say, please access market research. That will allow me to understand this audience better. You can also start tagging in GPTs. Market research, consensus, that's a topic for a different video, because that can be very useful as well. And you start bringing in different agents or ChatGPT or GPTs to help you do this research. But the last thing I'm going to show you now is kind of what we do with this information, how we actually action it. So for me, say now I want to communicate with this audience. I'm going to say something like, okay, based on that, I like tables. In table form, please suggest a few communications campaign ideas that will effectively engage this audience, overcome their barriers to purchase, and encourage them to buy from IKEA. Include columns, idea name, overview. Let's say reasons it will work, creative angle, and tactics. Okay, so I'm asking a lot here. It's probably going to give me not a huge amount of detail, but I just want to see what it comes up with. I think a few's a bit vague, so let's say three. Okay, let's see what we get. So, I'd say spend a bit more time on a prompt like this. For the sake of this video, I'm trying to move through this fairly quickly, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to actually get out of this. So one thing to know before we get into this is ChatGPT is based on the knowledge of the internet. So it's kind of an amalgamation of everything that's out there. So as a result, you end up with sometimes the average, if that makes sense, rather than unique creative ideas. So you really got to nudge it to try and get that creativity out. And I can go into more detail. There's another video where I go into more detail about that. About how to kind of get that creativity out. But for the sake of this, these should be decent thought starters, but might not be the most innovative ideas in the world. Let's see what we get. So, Home on a Budget series, campaign featuring a series of online videos and blog posts showcasing, resonates with cost-conscious consumers, provides practical, creative angle, real-life transformations of small. Okay, so it's not reinventing the wheel. It's nothing revolutionary, but for me, I can start thinking how I build a campaign out of this. I can start thinking about the creative angles, how you have a slider that, shows a before and after of a home. And then as you're dragging through, it might kind of pop up with the costs of things and then link through to IKEA products, kind of highlighting the fact that you can have a full before and after makeover, but it's actually not going to cost that much. IKEA Savings Club. Okay, interesting. I don't know if IKEA does anything like this. Again, this is going to be a big organization changing idea, but if you're a smaller brand, this might be something to consider. And then tactically how we execute that. DIY design contest. You'll find when you ask GPT for these things, it comes up with competitions a lot. Clearly, this is something that marketers do a lot of. But yeah, interactive campaigns where people share their DIY IKEA projects, which is quite nice. Lots of people take IKEA furniture and repurpose it into other things, upcycle it, and that kind of thing. Engages the DIY aspects of the consumer base. And community-driven contests makes sense, and then tactically how we'll market it. So from here, what I'd probably do is say, pick idea number one, and then flesh it out. Just like I fleshed out the audiences earlier, I'll say, give me more detail here, go into more tactics here, specifically what influencers should I work with? What channels should I work with? What kind of reach can I expect? There's a lot of things you can then start digging into. But, for this video is to and specifically how we could understand how we could get more research, get more information about them kind of out of ChatGPT instead of having to go and sift through loads of research on the internet. So it's a pretty good start. And then again, you can use this to start building out campaigns once you have this audience framework. So look, IKEA is going to be spending kind of a lot more time and effort in building out an audience framework like that. So this is kind of a hypothetical example for the sake of this video. But if you're a smaller brand, if you're kind of just starting an e-commerce store and you're selling furniture, this is a really, really good exercise to do to try and really get under the skin of your audience, because that is the best way to market at the end of the day, is to understand what the people you're selling to actually want and how they behave. The best thing you can do is go out and talk to them. But this is, if you can't and you want to just start with some cursory research, you can do something like this and 10, 15 minutes, get some pretty rich information out of tools like this. So cool, I'm going to leave it there. My name's Rees. I help people implement AI solutions at work. Things like GPT are just the tip of the iceberg. But yeah, I hope this has provided some value. If it has, drop the video a like, hit subscribe, and expect much more content like this to come.